Next session, well, this session is a bit more relaxed. It's a conversation with Bryony Livesey, who's head of the Industrial Decarbonisation Challenge, formerly at Coston, working on technology, and a long-time associate of UKCCSRC in various roles, for which we're very grateful. And we're going to have a conversation about our life, the universe and everything, but principally the Industrial Decarbonisation Challenge. I'll ask Bryony a few questions and then we'll open it up to the floor. So the story starts, as I remember, in 2018 in Katowice on the 13th of December, when the then Bayes, I always forget, Secretary of State Claire Perry, as she was then, announced £170 million, and I quote, to set world-leading ambition alongside plans for at least one low-carbon cluster by 2030. And they noted this would use cutting-edge technologies like carbon capture and storage. The UK is aiming to become a world leader in clean technology and services that will be needed as the world tackles climate change. So that if you like, kick things off. It's quite a long time ago now, but although it seems like a long time, actually to get from there, something that was just a twinkle in a minister's eye, to something which is loads of projects on the ground, probably about 30 meters high of paper if you stacked it all up on top of each other, and many millions of pounds of expenditure is really quite an achievement. And Bryony is a big part of that achievement. And I think that I've observed some quite interesting techniques in getting there, which I have to say shock people, but damn well achieve results. So, so Bryony, we heard when Claire Perry announced the Industrial Decarbonisation Challenge. When did you hear about it, and how did you come to be involved?
Well, I vaguely heard about it when proposals were under development to put together ideas around this challenge, and so I could see that happening, but I never thought of being involved in it. But one of the interesting things about this kind of role is you have to go through lots of stages of developing a business case and getting the money before you can actually get some staff in place. So they were kind of at the point where they needed someone to start delivery of the challenge, but weren't able to permanently recruit somebody for the role. So I got approached to see if I'd like to take this on for 6 months on an interim basis back in July 2019. And I'm still here.
So interesting. I mean, 2019. So that's actually quite a while after it was announced, isn't it? 6 months after it was announced. So it just shows that you do need time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So okay. So you have 6 months, and then you think. So where did you get to by the end of that 6 months? Because I think it was quite an interesting position, wasn't it?
It was an interesting time because I'd got quite strong views on how I thought the challenge should be structured from various pieces of work that I'd done before and the interactions I'd had. I really felt that developing one low carbon cluster at once was not the right way to go. The business case said that was what we were going to do, so I was quite determined to behind the scenes a little bit, change that so that we could develop a number of clusters in parallel, which I felt was going to be really important. And so my primary aim was to get far enough through the challenge that couldn't be dismantled by whoever came after me. And, I was just so keen that we would get our competitions running quickly so that, it was clear we were going to have a number of clusters funded. And, we were successful in that. So I think it was really a kind of, trying to make sure that we delivered what the CCS industry actually thought would be really helpful rather than, what was originally on a piece of paper, I suppose.
So yeah, not so much as leaving a poison chalice behind you, but an overflowing chalice. But actually, so what did you do? I mean, how did you move things on in such a drastic way? What was the sort of the structure of the call, if you like, and conditions?
When we
Let's
started
spell it
out,
out, come on.
when we started out, there was an expectation that just one big project would be funded and that would be a good thing. But £170 million, although it's a lot of money, it doesn't buy you a big project at all. You can't construct anything for that. And so what we were really trying to do was see how much could we deliver with that amount of money, and, you know, taking advice on how much could feasibly done and where could we get to. And then trying to make sure that, you know, the most credible industry clusters in the UK got involved in the competitions that we have to run to award the funding. And so it was really around trying to make sure they got engaged. But we were very aware that most people had done hardly anything on cluster development. They're entirely embryonic. And so we had an idea of having a two-stage competition process, so that you would go into the first stage, and then out of that, only projects that have been taken through that first stage could apply for significant amounts of money at the second stage. And I think that worked really well, because what it meant was that we could work with the original cluster teams and say, this isn't quite what we're looking for. We're looking for much a broader range of industries, or bigger number of partners, or different this, different that. And so it kind of ended up with, you know, that first 6 months of work being really influential for how the cluster developed in the longer run.
So if I remember rightly, which I probably don't, it was something like the call for the first phase was what, was in November, and then projects were due in, I don't know, bids were due in January, and then the actual delivery was, I don't know, March or something. Was it quite that soon? Or was it was 6 months? But it was certainly a very quick response into the first round. So basically the decisions that people made very early on committed them as well, if you like. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, we wanted to move really quickly because we'd only got X number of years to deliver all of this, and we didn't want to mess about, I suppose.
Yeah. Well, that's not messing about. So I think we've got some links up for statistics, so we don't have to remember exactly. So what did you then get out of the first round, and how did that translate into the second round?
Well, what we ended up with is all of the projects looking really good. They all look like they could go ahead, and what we really wanted to do was to help that process. And so it involved a lot of juggling, because if we'd always had the concept that we should have end-to-end projects, you know, with the store and the emitting projects all linked together. But it became clear that that wasn't quite going to work for us, because we got South Wales that didn't have a store, and so you couldn't really fairly evaluate them in a competition process against the others that had got, you know, capture and storage. And then we got two clusters that wanted to use the same store and didn't want to have, you know, one of them kind of being uniquely linked to the store. So we ended up completely changing the way we thought about the competition, and it made things a bit complicated. But we were quite convinced that all of these projects were potentially going to add real value to the UK. And I think what happened was we went through a very, you know, interesting competition process, but then I don't believe you should get large amounts of public money on the basis of writing a good bid. I think the important thing is to have experts really quiz the entrants on what exactly is their plan. You know, so I got a really fabulous team of people who took part in these interview panels. And we had, you know, government observers sitting behind the scenes watching all of this. And we had to prioritize the projects because we didn't have enough money to pay for them all. And I think it's, you know, to the amazing credit of the government that they went away and they got us an extra £40 million approved from the Treasury, which meant we could fund all the projects that entered in the competition, because they all looked so strong. You know, I mean, we went through the heartbreaking process of deciding which ones wouldn't get the money, just in case we couldn't get the extra 40 million. But that was a fantastic success, and it involved a lot of sorts of negotiations with Treasury that I probably would never want to be part of. It's a very complicated business.
Yeah, I was going to ask you what was the bit you didn't like most of all. But and then, so that's 240 or something, 210. And then how much do you think industry put in on top of that?
Oh, at least double. Yes, I mean, we, in our competition process, you have to sort of match fund the public contribution, but there's no ability to increase the grant if you go overspent. So the projects have got deadlines to meet. So, you know, the cost of, for example, the offshore elements of the projects is quite high. So they have put in a lot more money than they were required to do.
Yeah, yeah. And then where have you got to? So we've got a lot of projects, I think mostly carbon capture and storage, as meaning industrial decarbonisation. A little bit of non-CCS as well. I mean, how do you see the breakdown? How do you think it's worked out in the end?
Well, we focus very much on, you know, the critical infrastructure that we need in the UK, that we need to develop in collaboration, because that's really the point of the clusters, really, that we do need that infrastructure to develop to serve the needs of all the industries in the region.
And sorry, but for clarification, that sounds like mainly CO2 transport and hydrogen transport.
Yeah, so we really, I mean, the projects themselves have really focused on the CCS infrastructure, the hydrogen-related infrastructure.
Yeah, because you funded everything that was proposed, so it wasn't like there was stuff there that was put aside.
No.
Interesting. And then the Black Country cluster, which is the only non-CCS one.
Yeah, that's been a fabulous addition to the programme. It was a project we didn't foresee applying it to the competition. We didn't really write it with the idea that they would be able to apply. And they applied into our initial stage 1 competition. And looking at what they planned to deliver, you know, we got 2 choices. One was to write the stage 2 competition so they couldn't apply. You know, that just would clearly not be appropriate for them. And the other one was to just say, well, actually, they've got a great project. We're going to learn so much from this. Let's just let them submit and see whether they get through. And, you know, they've been a fabulous learning opportunity for the UK to look at, you know, how you get 1,000 or so SMEs together to think about what are the options for them. And they've had really challenging conversations and really moved forward, and tremendous impacts on, you know, the West Midlands conversations that are going on around decarbonisation. So it's been good, but that's not been the main focus of our programme. It's been just an additional learning point, I think.
And then out of the projects that went ahead, how many do you think are actually going to end up as steel in the ground?
All of them. I really don't see any of them not having the capability and the drive to carry on. I just think, you know, they all got tremendous confidence that, you know, they've got implementable solutions. You know, I mean, the work that's been done over the last few years has just been fantastic in the level of detail. And I think the confidence they've built up with, you know, their owners and so on means, you know, they've got a real chance to go ahead, I think.
But they'll sort of go out into track 2 and follow on projects in the track 1 clusters. So
yes.
Yeah, so they might not appear until 2030 or even a little bit later.
Yes, not every single project in each cluster will go ahead, I suppose, but, you know, the general thrust is that, you know, the main clusters themselves are on track to thrive, I guess.
Yeah. So, okay, I just finish the questions. I think people have got the general picture, but I just say, what did you find most surprising? And then if you could send a note through a wormhole in time and space back to yourself when you started, what advice would you give yourself?
I suppose, you know, the main surprise for me was actually being appointed into this role full time, if I was being totally honest, because by this time I'd done 6 months, I wanted this job so much. It was just, because it was such a fabulous opportunity to actually be involved in shaping how we do things and deliver things. And, you know, so I mean, that was really quite a big surprise. So, you know, I know a number of people who applied for it, and I felt pretty pleased when I got it. So there was that. And then I suppose a note to myself, well, I suppose it might be something along the lines of, you know, keep going, because we have been through difficult times with the projects, because they're all very complicated. They all have their ups and downs. And, you know, we've had to do a lot of jiggling around with them to make sure that at the end of the programme they've all got sensible projects coming forward. And I think, you know, sometimes you have bad times, but, you know, just focusing on the fact it's all going to come out okay in the end, perhaps.
Yeah. Okay. Right. I've asked Bryony enough questions. Who else has got any questions to ask? Anyone? They must want a cup of coffee, Bryony. Or perhaps they don't think we can ask you anything worse. Okay, well, I don't think we'll stop quite there then. I'll use my, there is somebody, right. Oh, thank you. Oh, I'll have to go over to the, I can't read it. That's just, let me go and stand by the thing. Yeah, so, okay, what are the next steps? I don't know whether it means to industrial decarbonisation or for the industrial decarbonisation challenge itself.
Yeah. Well, one of the things we set out to do was to finish our programme on the 31st of March 2024, and we are doing that. So finishing, and that is, I think, something I am tremendously proud of. I mean, we set up this programme, you know, from scratch, you know, with no clear design in place, and we delivered it all, and all the projects have been successful. None of them have dropped out. And I think why I feel that's important is, you know, we've talked earlier today about the history of disappointing projects in the UK, and I felt it was really important for industry confidence that we did this and the projects all delivered on time and we didn't have any delays and that we finished. So most programs like ours, they get extensions and they have add-ons and things. So I mean, the industrial decarbonisation challenge is one of a whole set of challenges that UKRI runs. Most of my colleagues have got their jobs continuing because they've got an extra year because of COVID. They've got an extra year because they've applied for an extension. I really didn't want that because I think we should just say, yeah, we can do this. And we did, you know, I think that was fantastic. Yeah. So there are no next steps in that sense because, you know, what we have to do now is really, you know, bring together all the learnings from the challenge and celebrate that, which we will be doing this summer. And then it's over to others, really.
Over the delivery phase, yeah. And well, roughly speaking, how many projects was it, total number?
Gosh, I don't know. You know, in the cluster planning processes that we funded, we had, you know, maybe 80 or 90 different companies involved in those. And then, yeah, I don't actually know that number. It's quite a lot, though.
Yeah, and you said everybody finished on time. Completely off. You know, you don't have to name names here, but what did you think was the most sort of difficult one what kind of circumstances seemed to you most difficult to prod into completion? What was the most sort of challenging delay that you overcame in general terms, if you can say it?
I suppose we had to give up on the idea that our original milestones were going to be met because the projects themselves changed a lot to meet the aspirations of the cluster sequencing process, and were really delivered by those timescales. And so whilst their original aspiration was to reach a final investment decision by March 2024, that's clearly not possible given the surrounding government processes. And so we had to be flexible around, you know, what were we actually going to take as a sensible endpoint. But, you know, the projects have all delivered, you know, credible feed studies and are ready to move to the next stage. And that's the important thing. And I suppose the other challenge is inevitably you have industries where, you know, their parent company is not in the UK and they've got different investment challenges, and, you know, sometimes company policy just changes and, you know, a project partner has to leave. But that's been fine because we found that the structure of the projects has meant that they can bring in new partners or redistribute the grants to different sorts of projects. And so in the end, all the cluster plans and the projects have continued on, You know, and if people wanted to leave, kind of fine, really, because if it's not the right time for them, that's okay. And I think, you know, that's been one of the strengths of the program, that we've had that flexibility for people to come and go.
Then we've got a few questions in which I'll summarise because time's getting a bit late. But when's the next round of industrial decarbonisation challenge funding, do you think? I bet you've had that question a few times, haven't you?
I have, yes. I mean, so as I said, you know, we're coming to an end, but of course there are massive, you know, investments through DESNZ in, you know, taking technology forward, for example, and of course, you know, they are looking to bring new clusters forward. So I think the funding will just be in a different form, really.
And then I guess I will wrap up here. There's a question about carbon dioxide removals, which there is a DESNZ program, so not directly part of yours. But if you were just coming on again, if people were looking back in I don't know 20, 30 years time at the challenge, what would you have liked them to say about it?
I think, you know, we set out to kickstart the decarbonisation of industrial clusters in the UK and to demonstrate that working together as a cluster would have benefits. So, you know, others have talked about there being economic benefits, but what we have striven through our programme is to try to help people consider the broader benefits. And it was really great to hear, you know, both Ben and David today talking about their impact on their communities and skills. I mean, that is something that we've tried to put at the heart of the programme, to think about, you know, the social importance of these big projects, you know, for the regions in which they sit. And so I think we hope people will recognise that we've delivered a more sort of knowledge sharing community as well, because that is also crucial for getting costs down, telling people what you know. And wasn't it so great to hear from VPI just now about, here's some of the challenges we've faced, you know, you can learn from us. I think that was amazing. Thanks so much.
Okay, well, Bryony, you said you kick-started the, I think kick is the right word, and you know, as people say, kick up the backside, or sometimes send you a lot further than a pat on the back. But I think we have to say that in leading the challenge, you certainly deserve a pat on the back. And you know, on behalf of the industry, I'm sure you'll get more thanks. But thanks very much for doing such a good job.
Thank you so much.